Welcome to the Real Estate All Day podcast, where we unpack the latest tips, tricks, and tactics that move the needle in your real estate business and unpack the stories behind the agents that are buying and selling real estate in your market today. What's up, and welcome to this episode of the Real Estate All Day podcast. I am so excited to bring on our guest today. I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Christopher Benitez, and we have one heck of a guest for you guys today. He is a broker owner in Central Arkansas, and the reason we really wanted to bring this guest on today is because I absolutely think he is one of the funnest people in all of real estate. When it comes to selling properties, being marketing focused, someone who is always pushing the envelope, the person we're going to put in front of you today has been leading that charge. And, we've had the joy of building a relationship with this person over the last year. And we've been able to see, what this person does from afar, but really start to build a relationship and understand that there's more to him specifically than just selling real estate. So much so that it's become a lifestyle over just a profession. And I think that you guys will find that today with our guest. He's an absolute blast. Cake lover, which we're definitely going to talk about cake today. I cannot let that go, y'all. I'm telling you right now, it's pretty exciting. You'll find out about this later. He's a former CrossFit coach and he's a fitness enthusiast, so to speak. Someone who he's a husband. He's a father and just really enjoys pouring into other people. And I think you guys are going to experience that today. And Christopher, without any further ado, I want to bring in our very special guest, Mr. Ray Allen.
Yes, go Ray.
Let's go. What's up, guys? Now, y'all, we are recording because we weren't on the first time. So it was one of those rough moments where we're like, well, let's get going. We had a good question lined up and we just kind of like let it all die. So
it's so good.
You too can run a podcast, no problem.
Yeah, if these guys can do it.
yeah, absolutely. And Ray, I want to get right into this because we talked about you being one of the funnest people, I think, to follow, especially in real estate. And for you guys, we're going to give you places to go check Ray out, by the end of the episode here. But as you can see, if you're on YouTube with us, and if you're not, I would encourage you to go back and check it out because this man is sitting in front of us with one of the coolest beers in all of real estate, right? A purple shirt sitting in his purple highlighted, studio here. But this is one of the things about Ray. This isn't for show as much as it is this is who Ray is, right? It's an extension of how he operates. And Ray, I want to take us back just a little bit and kind of set this question up because, you were an assistant in 2006, got your license in 2007, Lord help you, decided in 2018, you were going to start your own brokerage. And, here you are leading the way, I think, in our industry in terms of being a thought leader in the marketing space and how you can approach real estate. And, we sit here today and you got your cool purple shirt on and your Pixel, logo on top of it. But I'm guessing that you most likely didn't start that way because most of us walk into real estate and they're like, here's your tie and here's your desk and good luck. Right.
Yeah.
So how did you go from that place, if you were there in the past, to, being comfortable enough to walk into somebody's living room, sit down across the table, with your brand, knowing that you have value to deliver? How did you get to that point?
Yeah, that's a great question because it definitely wasn't always like this. And I think I've said this in our clubhouse rooms before, but there's this whole idea and philosophy with a lot of the upcoming agents in the industry that, you do you, if you want to wear a t-shirt and sweatpants and go grab listings, and you can do that, go you. And to tell you the truth, I totally disagree with it. I mean, as a new agent, I think you should do what everyone before you has done. And, you should follow the pattern of success set before you and follow it until you've mastered it. And then when you want to differentiate and when you know what you doing you cost you, then you can change. So for me, I spent years doing the old scripts, doing the phone calls, doing the door knocking. And, a lot of new agents want to start where I am today. And that's impossible. That's like a kid in high school being like, no. I don't want to do all the practices and stuff. I just want to be Brady. I shouldn't compare myself to Brady. Let's go with Russell Wilson, right? He's been in the news lately. So, but that's kind of like, you see somebody that's been in the business for 14, 15 years, and a new agent wants to pick up right where they are. Now, a new agent can have the level of success that that person has, but they have to go about it differently. They can't just like come out and be like, I'm going to make my mark in the industry, because the industry is going to look at them and say, well, who are you? So for a long time, I think maybe just honoring those that came before me and honoring the who I looked at as sages in the industry and people that were at brokerages I was at who'd been doing it 15, 20 years. I was learning from them. And I was learning how to master the craft of real estate. I was learning to have the chops so that I knew what I was talking about when I would speak. Then I started to differentiate when I looked up, and I was a pretty successful agent in the marketplace, and I wanted to start marketing myself differently. Well, I let the beard go. I changed style. I just became more comfortable in who I was. And now to this day, I'll go do a listing presentation for someone, and they'll sit across the table from me and they'll say, well, one of the things we really like about you is that you're different from everyone else we interviewed. And I even tell them, like, I know a lot of people sitting in front of you are going to say this script, and I'll say the script, and I know the script because I used to say it. And I'll say, let me tell you what that actually means. And I peel back the layers of that and tell them the truth of real estate and why things are happening. And it adds a certain context to that seller that I instantly gain their trust. And so it's all about trust. It's always been about trust. And now that I look different than some people in the industry, I'm gaining trust. Now, there are people who won't use me because I have a beard. There are people who won't use me because I show up on podcasts and t-shirts, right? And I'm okay with that, because the number of people who do use me and the comfort level I have for those clients that I get, they are like me. So I don't know. I would say, advice to new agents: spend some time getting to know the craft of real estate, how to really service a client. Don't worry so much about, trying to be a YouTube star. Or, there's a running joke in this RETV group that I run that, hey guys, I just got my license. What video camera should I use? It's like the wrong question, right? Let's go get some sales. Cause if you don't do that, then you're not going to make it long enough to make videos anyway. So, now I'm not saying at the same time, some people are like, well, that's a limiting belief, saying I can't start and have the same success. Yes, that would be a limiting belief if that's what I was saying, but I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's wise to get your real estate chops first and then jump out there in front and start marketing. If a company had a terrible product but was a phenomenal marketer, they would just go out of business faster. So you have to have the quality of product. You have to have a set of systems, a set of beliefs around the transaction that you understand and know. Then you could start to market yourself and market those things that differentiate you from the industry.
Yeah, I love that. The whole adage of earning the op, right?
Yeah.
Earning the opportunity. And I was going to ask you the question to unpack what the quote you gave, because I think it's awesome. What you doing you cost you, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you alluded to at the very end of that. And I appreciate you unpacking that, because that is absolutely one of the things that we have to get comfortable with.
Yeah.
And I think Ray, that is going to lead me to the next most reasonable question is like, well, okay, what does that mean? Because as a new agent, I just want to service everyone, right?
Yeah.
I want to service everyone, or I want to take the shortcut, like you alluded to. And there are people in our industry that have taken shortcuts, but if you peel back the onion, like you said, peel back the layers, you'll find out that they were doing things for 5, 10, 15 years prior to walking in
Yeah.
the door. There are many people in our industry. You can point to Brad McCallum as a great example of that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know Brad personally, but I've been watching his journey, right? He's got other skill sets that have led him to the point where he is today, that has given him the opportunity to have success in real estate in a shorter period of time, shorter, right?
Yeah.
Period of time. Katie Day is another great example of that, of people in the industry that are like, okay, they've done things prior to it when you start digging into their
Right.
story, right? So when you're working with those agents on your team, or a newer agent on your team, how do you help coach somebody through this? And I think it's going to be super helpful knowing that you're also a past CrossFit coach, because you're dealing with a lot.
Yeah.
It's way more mental than it is anything else, right? So like, how are you
Yeah.
coaching people through that process of like, I can't wait to set you free, but we got to get you there first.
Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons why I was a CrossFit coach for a long time is just number one, for what that sport did for me and the health that it gave me. But number two is I get a lot of joy out of watching someone squat and then telling them to adjust their feet just slightly, and their squat form looks better and they can squat more. Like, that's fun. That's fun to see that slight change. And I get that same joy from helping our agents, whether it's their listing presentation or buyer consultation. You'll say, well, let's just adjust how you say that to say it like this. And then they make that adjustment and they become more successful because of that adjustment. So I really get a lot of joy out of that part of it. But one of my first pieces of advice to new real estate agents, while you're entering in everyone into the database, while you're doing the handwritten notes and that kind of stuff, letting people know that you've set really big goals and you're going to ask for them to help you support that and you're going to need their help. So while you're recruiting your sphere to help you succeed in real estate, study the contracts. Because if you ask Brad, for example, what does section 5 of your contract say? He will tell you. He knows it. He'll tell you what it means, and he'll tell you the consequences if that's not followed, right? So one of the first things I did was I put each section of the contract on an index card and I wrote it out. And on the flip side, I just kind of put the title of that section. And I spent weeks and weeks and weeks studying the contracts. So I know that section 16 is the inspection repair survey addendum for us. And in that contract, this is what it says in that spot. There's two things to fill out, either A or B. If you fill out A, you do this. If you fill out B, this happens. Here's the, you've got 10 business days to do that. Send it to all of that stuff I knew from reading the contract. And once I knew that and had it committed to memory, I could serve my clients better. For instance, a lot of people don't know it, but within 5 business days, you have to make full loan application for a purchase. And if you don't do that, the seller could terminate the contract based on that. So my clients wanted a house. The house is under contract. The agent said, I'm sorry, we're still waiting on the loan. It's an approval issue. There's something happening. And I told that agent, well, have they made full application for the loan? And they said, no, they're still working on it. I said, how many days has it been? And they said, well, it's been about 8 days. That's 6 business days is what it turned out to be. So I said, well, you could terminate the contract and put our clients in first place. So they accepted ours as a backup offer. They terminated the contract. My client cut the deal. That agent didn't read that section. So they didn't know that was possible. And so if you know the contracts, you can better serve your clients. You'll keep your fanny out of the fire, but you'll start to develop the real estate chops to know what you're talking about in real estate. And hopefully that gives you the confidence to come out even stronger about stuff. So my advice to new real estate agents, know the contracts front and back, because I can't tell you how many agents that have had like 10, 15 years in the business that haven't taken the time to read through the contracts. And a lot of people ask me about technology, like, Ray, how do you know so much about the Apple ecosystem and the iPhone? When I get a new iPhone, I read the manual. Like, I don't know how many people do that. I sit down, I read the manual.
It's just
I
you.
read. Yeah, probably. That's why it's just printed for me, the ultimate nerd. I will even rewatch the keynote present, which actually there was one today that I've been in meetings all day. So I'm gonna go watch it. So there, I will rewatch that keynote that shows you, here's what you do to the operating system. Here's what the new phone is capable of. And then I take that phone and start to play with it. And instantly, like in a week, people are like, whoa, you've already mastered this piece of technology. Well, I read the instructions. It's not difficult. You just have to read the instructions. So you can very quickly escalate your experience if you read the instructions in real estate, if you read the contracts and know what's going on and understand the process. Because there's a lot of agents that have been in the business 10 years that say, I've got 10 years of experience. But in reality, to borrow a quote from Jim Rohn, they have 1 year of experience repeated 10 times. And so as you as an agent take every one of your experiences, plus the things like studying the contract, and you invest that into the next, then you invest that one into the next, and you invest that one into the next, you're going to have exponential experiential growth versus just experiencing a year and then trying to figure out what the heck just happened.
I love that, Ray. Would you say that, like, overall, right? Would you say that, because this is kind of the common theme in a lot of our conversations, is that yes, there's the technology, yes, there's all these features you can use and all these tools, but it seems like the fundamentals, it seems like people need to get back to the basics or start at the basics. And it's like it's not it's I feel like some people jump to content and they misinterpret it as, hey, go dance, go do something funny, versus no, just go magnify what's fundamental. magnify the fundamentals. And so would you say that you're seeing that people are kind of like, man, we got to get back to the basics? Because that's what I'm kind of pulling from what you're saying. But I'm just curious on your take, like across the board, does it feel like people just have to get back to basics in this real estate thing?
I think so. I don't think the industry has pointed that direction. I think the industry is pointed more of a nanny direction, to where you have these companies and systems and processes that begin to nanny the agents through that. And so then you
Ooh,
have
that's a bar
agents.
right there.
Well, you have
Louder,
agents.
louder for the back, louder for the back.
Louder for the ones in the back. But when that happens, you have agents that are only slightly one step ahead from the consumer. And then the consumer seeing this and saying, well, why can't that piece of software nanny me through the transaction if my agent has no idea what they're doing, doesn't know the process, and is using that piece of software to nanny them through it? So just remove that middleman, save me, whatever percentage, and then let me just have access to that software. And for consumers, they think that's a solution. To them, it looks like money savings because there's no added value, because the agent they haven't gone back to the basics. They don't really know what they're doing. The principal brokers are these giant clearinghouses of brokerages that don't have training anymore. So what? They're going to bring someone and sell it, and the principal broker or the brokers is going to make the money. That's all that matters, right? So I think there's a big problem in our industry. And one of them is that not only have we started to give away the lead gen opportunity to these big companies, but we're also starting to give away the education for the consumer and the agent to these companies. So now you have like a big Zillow conglomerate. They already have the lead gen side of it. If they start training consumers and agents how to build and sell houses or buy and sell houses, then they're just going to have agents as employees. Then what's to stop them from saying, okay, we're gonna lower the pay of these agents and increase our technology and software to better serve the consumer? So agents, you're still going to make a little bit, but we just need you to kind of escort them through the transaction. Then what's the value of the agent? So I think the industry, I think you're right, Chris, that we do need to get back to the basics, but I don't think the industry is headed that way.
So that brings up another point, Ray, is like, where do you think the I don't say balance. I hate the word balance because it only exists when you're standing on a slack line, right? Like outside of that, nothing ever else is in balance. So, but what do you think is the sweet spot between, we can't have agents sitting around reading contracts forever, not being in action, right?
Yeah.
And we can't have them being so far in action, to Chris's point, where they're doing dancing on TikToks and then they're
they don't know what they're
practicing on their clients with real life bullets, which is a problem, right? So what do you think that sweet spot is for any agent? I think this applies to both new and existing agents, right?
Yeah. So to coin a phrase from Jesus, it said, "Go ye therefore and make disciples," right? It didn't say stay and study the scriptures and then figure out how to make disciples and go. It does have to be an as you go thing. As you're going about life, as you're going about your business, you have to do both. And the balance on that, I think, is delicate, but I think having mentors and people in your life that can help you is going to be crucial, where you have someone that you trust, whether it be a principal broker or a mentor or someone at a company that, that knows their stuff, that has the chops. As a new agent, I think you can study and start to reach out and then lean on their expertise. One of the things we've always offered at our brokerage is me. Like if you need to go get a listing and you don't know how to do it, then I'm going to go with you and we're going to get that listing. And then I'm going to walk you through the whole process and we're going to keep training all the way through. What I don't want to happen is just the total giving up of the process. And that's what we're seeing more of. That's what we have to get back as real estate agents. The uniqueness and the diversification of the process throughout the industry is what creates choice. Someone dealing with you, Juan, is going to have a different experience than dealing with me. And that's a wonderful thing because you're going to attract different buyers and sellers than I will. And that's great. And that's why that choice is a good thing for people. But when it goes to big clearinghouses and brokerages and big companies that, kind of take out the little guy, it's going to be all the same. And there's going to be a lot of that doesn't serve clients well. So the diversification is actually the opportunity to increase the value. So I think for new agents, the balance is doing it. 87% of agents fail in the first 2 years. That number hasn't changed in a while, may have even gone up. The reason they don't succeed is because they don't do the work. And the work of guiding someone through a transaction is easy. We all know, like, you could have 20, 30 contracts under contract in a month, and it might get a little hectic, but that's easy. Right? Keeping up with contract timelines and dates is not hard. Helping someone make decisions about what to ask for and what not to ask for that's not the hardest thing in your day. What's the hardest thing in your day? Calling that number that called you and you're not really sure, but they left a message about wanting to see a property and you just feel like, are they already working with an agent? What's going on? That's the hard part for most agents. And if you don't make those calls and if you don't make the follow-up calls, you're going to die on the vine. So I think the focus on follow-up should be maybe more emphasized in the industry, and the focus on constant contact. And then as you're doing that, you should have time to study the contracts and know what the heck you're doing. It's not going to take all day to study the contracts, right? Maybe an hour. And then you have 12 more hours that day? Do a couple hours lead gen, and then what?
Yeah, you said something in there, Ray, and it reminded me of a quote from this book right here. If you guys have not read this book, Sold by David Green, I think it's the best piece of literature ever written on real estate, hands down. It should be the training manual on every single book, just like I think every child should get cash flow quadrant before they ever walk out of high school. This book should be given every single agent before they ever leave the classroom. And there's a sentence in here, Ray, and I take it back to exactly what you were just saying. It says, real estate sales offers massive earning opportunities for one specific reason. Very few agents are willing to push beyond their comfort zone. Right?
Yeah.
And
100%.
It just sums up exactly what you said. And the thing that I love about where this conversation has already went is, you guys, we started this conversation by talking about how Ray is one of the funnest people in all real estate, and then he just for the last 20 minutes bludgeoned you with fundamentals. Right? Like, but I love that. It goes to speak to the quality of the individual, right? The reason that he wins when he sits down at a table is because he's bringing an authentic, true experience, and he's willing to share what's behind the veil, right? He said that with his clients. He likes to sit down and peel back the onion. And I love that, man. So when we're talking, it gave me so many nuggets. I could drill down all this stuff for a half hour, because this is my favorite thing to do. It is just getting around people who are really understanding. And we've been having a lot of conversations lately about outcomes. And we were in a room the other evening. For those of you that don't know, we have a room called Good Evening Real Estate. And there was a real estate professional in there. His name is Andy C., who lists a ton of real estate, right? And y'all, and I mean a ton, okay? And I'm not going to speak to Andy's numbers. Go check them out. Find out for yourself, right?
It's phenomenal.
It's ridiculous. And one of the things he said in there, which I think people almost fell out of their chair, was Andy said, we don't focus on goals anymore. We don't talk about goals. We don't, and I don't remember if he said they do or they do not goal set. So I don't want to put that in his mouth, but everyone heard loud and clear that they don't focus on goals. And the reason being is because he's so focused on the process that the outcome is predictable.
Yeah.
Right. The outcome is entirely predictable because they only focus on the process. Right. And if I can take a step back, and just from what I know from you over the last year, Ray, like, you're somebody who studies, you're well studied in the game. Right. But you're also studying things that are coming down the pipe too. Right. And that leads towards this marketing. To me, you feel like a very marketing forward entrepreneur, and you may or may not say that. Sometimes it's just a little bit of effort that looks like a lot more to other people, and it's just the way it works, because people aren't willing to go down those roads. But like,
I tell you though, sometimes it's also the opposite. Sometimes it's a ton of effort. It looks like a little bit, but the difference it makes is huge. And everyone's like, oh, that probably didn't make a difference. It made a huge difference. They have no idea.
That's great. So let's get on that. Unpack that for me. Give us an example of what that type of experience for you, or
so
one of your agents.
I'll tell you where my headspace is right now around marketing and real estate agents. There's a lot of like rip off and duplicate in the industry. And I in part blame Tom Ferry, who I love.
I was to say,
he's always told me,
your coach, isn't this, he's coined this phrase, it's trademarked at this point.
Rip off and duplicate, off. And in like 2000, that was a good idea. because we were making like property flyers and stuff like that. And you'd make the property flyer. And he basically said, just take that person's name and logo off, stick yours on it, and put it in your neighborhood. And that localized type marketing is a great idea. But these days, like ripping off and duplicating in a world where I produce something and the entire world can see it, it decreases the advantage of being the second mover. So there's a tremendous advantage from being a first mover in your industry on something as a creative. And so, for instance, Glenda Baker, who we all love's wonderful. She has been doing the 2-camera. I think she looks like to the light guy, but the camera's there, and she tells these wonderful stories. And one of the things that makes her videos wonderful is that she's such a great storyteller, right? So she's kind of become a leader in the industry, and you see other agents taking on that type of video where they're looking off of the camera and they're telling a story. They're not as good of a storyteller. So there's probably a different avenue that they can communicate that and be just as interesting to their own audience without, like, they go through all this trouble. They get the professional shoot and everything. They get like 300 views and she's getting 300,000. What's the difference? The difference is one of them's a first mover, so you got huge advantage. Number two, one of them's a phenomenal storyteller. The other one's okay storyteller, but the format that they're using to communicate the message is not attractive to their audience because it isn't who they are. So I've really been on this kick lately about trying different things to figure out who my audience is and what they like and what they interact with. And I recently produced a video, which I thought was dumb. And it took probably 2 hours, an hour to shoot, hour to edit. And I'm sitting around, and since this is in post, you should take this and just put it over the commentary. The idea came to me when I had a buyer that said, hey, we want to make an offer on this property. And I said, okay, great. What do you want to offer? And they're like, whatever it takes. Like, how do you write that offer? And we've all as agents kind of been there, like a whatever it takes offer. I don't know. And so I have this video, and it's me talking to 3 other me's, right? And they're all like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm writing an offer. It's whatever it takes. I don't know what to write. And like, we have this discussion, me and 3 other me's. And
great.
And have you seen it? It's kind of
no,
a weird,
but I can already picture
it. It was epic. It was epic.
That's fantastic.
So, and at the end of the discussion, it kind of has some circular structure to the way the story's told, where he kind of ends up in the same place he started. And the words I put with it were they kind of went with it, but it also gave some buyers like tips on how to structure these offers, and agents too. Like, when this is said, like, here's what you need to think about. But the messaging, I could have just told a story about, off to camera. Hey, let me tell you about this one time a client asked me to do whatever it takes, wound up, throwing in everything in a bag of chips type of thing. Right. So I could have just told that story, but the story wouldn't have garnered the attention that video did. So the way I created that video, and I've got several others I've tested, that one's done the best. So I think my storytelling is going to go that direction, in which I'm starting to have bunches of discussions with myself and me as other characters. I didn't generate that idea of me talking to myself. There are 3 people that I follow on Instagram that do the exact same thing, but they're in totally different industries. So I think one of the things that agents should start doing is looking outside of yourself, outside of our industry, and into other industries, and seeing what is successful and what's working for those creators, and what is this lender doing over here, and how is this working, and start to borrow little ideas, implementing them into your own situations with creativity, and seeing if your audience likes that. Because one, you could do the same exact video I did, and your audience, you might get 300 views, right? But my audience, for whatever reason, liked it. Like, okay, so I'm going to do a couple more of those and see if they continue to like that style of video. And if they do, now I kind of know how I'm going to do the storytelling. So instead of rip off and duplicate, I think people should be inspired and test, right? Just take the inspiration from Juan, take the inspiration from Chris, take the inspiration from the other people and read, and let that inspire you to create something that's uniquely you that your audience is actually looking for. Because my audience is not looking for Glenda Baker. Though I love her, my audience might not. So what is my audience like? Who are they looking for me to be? Well, they're looking for me to be me. So how do I communicate myself effectively? And for me, it's by cloning. It sounds ridiculous, but
For you, it's you. It's you showing you.
Yeah, it's me in multiplication.
It's,
And what was that
I,
one?
it's
think
not every
that's
day.
cool.
It's not every day you can unleash your psychosis and win in life, right? Like that
That's
is
pretty much it.
When I heard that, I was like, "That's fabulous." You guys remember the movie Multiplicity with Michael
Yeah.
Douglas back? Oh,
Yeah.
that's immediately I went to the scene because Ray, you kind of have that like fun analytical like this is your balance thing, right? So as soon as I heard this, of course I haven't seen the video, but as soon as you're describing this, I'm like, of course,
Yes.
that is classic. Like that's you. I immediately, even though I haven't seen it, I could feel it. I
It's
know
kind of
that's
goofy,
gonna work. Yep.
but it works. Yeah.
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 That
Right.
makes sense, man. And I love the idea of inspired and test, but you went back to a point that you hit earlier as well, where you mentioned mentorship or coaching.
Yeah.
And I think this is a great case for coaching because a lot of the times we get stuck in our own world. Like it's just like when, I've been in the gym for a long time, and then you walk into the doctor's office and he's like, how long has this been bothering you? You're like, I don't know. It's been forever. Right. Like, and now somebody's pointed it out. So now you start to recognize that there's an issue when there's
Yeah.
always been the issue, but because you weren't focused on it, it didn't matter. Right.
Yeah.
So as a professional, and I go back to my hospitality days, my regional managers would walk in and these guys were walking in restaurants all over the Midwest, and they'd walk in the door. They'd be like, hey, what about this, and this? And it's like I knew it was there, but I wasn't really focusing on it because you're in your box. And ultimately, you start to get this malaise, this haze of I'm just doing my thing and I don't worry about it. So I love that idea of coaching. And I want to point to this exact thing, Ray, because I want to ask you, like, okay, so your real estate coach is telling you to rip off and duplicate, but you just gave an example of getting coaching outside of your industry or at least following a mentor. Like as you guys can see, I love to read, but that's not so I can say I'm a reader. It's because those people have insights and intellect and experiences that I can borrow from, and they're willing to sell them to me for like $13.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge fan of that. So like, are you being coached somewhere? Like, well, let me ask this in a different way. What other industries are you looking at that are inspiring you currently?
That's a great question. So the philosophy of looking outside of your primary coach comes from no one person knows everything, but literally we all together do. Everyone in the world together knows everything, right? So how many of those other voices can I bring into my lifetime so that I can know more? So I love my coach, and I think the difference in coaching, like someone asked me this recently, because you can watch YouTube and get a lot of real estate advice. You can read the books and figure out what to do as a real estate agent. So why do you need a coach? The difference is the practical application of the theory. So you can see, the tactics, you could see what you should do. But with a coach, you get the practical application of that strategy that fits your business model. That's where the coach should come in. If you're visiting with a coach and they're like, yeah, you need to lead gen more, that's not a coach. All right. You need to change coaches. If you're visiting with a coach though, and they're like, well, you said you wanted to lead gen more. You said these were your 3 lead gen sources. You've got this new idea. I think that can implement well with this other 1 lead gen source. How are we going to do that? Does it attract the same audience? Now you're applying an idea you've had to a specific instance. So, but looking outside of the industry, like for me, I look at whatever I enjoy is where I go. So there's 2 guys in particular that, I don't want to drop them because some are adults, but they're kind of comedy based, like Instagram influencer types. And I'm watching what they're doing and taking like little bits and pieces of what they do, little bits and pieces of people inside of our industry, little bits and pieces of some lenders I know, and then bringing those voices and kind of looking at the pile and saying, okay, what am I going to do with this? What idea is going to be generated from this? Now, sometimes I totally rip off the idea, and that's fine too, because I'm doing it my own way. Like around Christmas, there was a thing where people were throwing the ornament, and then their whole living room turned into Christmas decor, right? So the song in the background was the one from Rocking Around the Christmas Tree. And so I did two things that no one else had done before. I was in it. So normally people just throw it and they're not in that video and they see the whole living room explode. I was in it. So I had my wife throw the ornament and I caught it. And then when you turned around, I was like in a reindeer suit. And the other thing I did, which no one did, it became real meta for people that noticed. They were like, ooh, that was slick. I found the spot in Home Alone where Rocking Around the Christmas Tree was at the same time. And I had that on the TV behind me suddenly. So I did two things, and one was super meta. There was probably only 10 people that noticed and messaged me, but they were like, oh my gosh. But for me, I found joy in making it that accurate, right? And that was more fun for me. I found joy in taking someone's idea and just kind of building upon it and adding something to it. So, I think if the question is, where do you look to find the ideas? It's where you enjoy looking. What do you like? I like CrossFit. I like baking. I like certain types of comedy. I like, video editors. I watch a lot of wonderful video editors and things like that on Instagram to get ideas and see what they're doing with reels and how they're using the transitions. So because I enjoy those things, that's what I'm going to consume anyway. And if I enjoy it and consume it, there's a good chance that my audience will kind of like that type of stuff too, if I mishmash it together and also put in my personality.
I love that. That's great. And that is a classic example of looking outside of that. I've had the good fortune of, being involved in some pretty unique coaching groups on the marketing side of, outside of real estate for the last few years. It's been 5 now.
Yeah.
And, so many people inspired me. Billie Jean is video. Billy's been doing this for a long time. He was one of the first guys that really get creative and hammer down on Facebook ads. And that just inspired me to go learn an industry that I had no experience in. I wasn't a marketer by trade. I didn't understand any of those things. The very first event I showed up at, like, they were talking a language that it might as well have been Mandarin to me. Right. Like, I just didn't know these things. Right. Like, I didn't know the difference between sales and marketing. No one had ever taken the time to explain those things to me before. I grew up in beer sales where sales and marketing was one thing, right?
Yeah.
And like, you don't know what you don't know is one of my favorite terms. But what I found was there's nothing new under the sun, right? Yeah. All of these things have already been created. It's the way that we curate these ideas and make them our own. That's where the authenticity starts to shine through. And I love that. And like, and I asked you that specific question because you're lighthearted, you're fun, but you're very process driven too. And you just heard a classic example of somebody deconstructing a process, right? Like, how do I make this my own where I can apply this and make it real? So I really appreciate you sharing that. Guys, that segment right there was like, that was the real value. Ray just showed you how to work through the problem, right? Yeah. So I love that, man. Thank you for sharing. But you did mention one thing in there that I want to just not let slide over the table here. You mentioned cake. And y'all, I don't know if you know this or not, but Ray loves himself some cake.
Yeah. So speaking of process driven and problem solving.
That's right. Talk to us about these cakes, man.
So when I was little, my mom would make all my cakes. And so I thought at the time it was just because she enjoyed making them. I learned when I grew up that cakes are expensive. And Mama was saving some money, but she was good at it. Like, she would make people's wedding cakes every now and then. So she would always do it with icing and all that kind of stuff. And she taught me how to bake and make it from scratch. And, I have all these, secret family recipes that, of different types of icings and cakes and stuff like that we make. And so whenever I had kids, we didn't have any money at first. And so I just made the cakes and I started making the cakes, and their requests started getting more and more outlandish. And I would turn to my mom and YouTube and figure out how to make them. And I started making cakes that are like, I made one that looked like a Barbie doll and it had a huge dress, and I've, done fondant work. I've started getting real bougie with the spice cakes that I made one of those for Thanksgiving, like a carrot cake. It was a spice cake, and I made all the, put it on the wooden platter, all that stuff. So I've just always kind of it's always been kind of a soothing time for me to sit back and make a cake. And, it's something that it's kind of in our family now. So I made, even like, one of my kids had a movie night birthday. And so I made this giant, it looked like a giant bucket of popcorn, and put real popcorn on the top. Now here's the challenge. How do you make popcorn and cake taste good together? Buttercream icing. Oh, buttercream icing with the popcorn, a little bit of saltiness with the chocolate. Oh my goodness. So for me, that's the fun part of that, kind of behind the scenes. I like to make the cakes, but they got to taste good. And so I go through a lot of trouble to make sure they taste good. But yeah, you can follow my Instagram account. Usually the fall is our cake season, is what we call it. Starting in August, it gets crazy all the way through to December. It's just cake season all the time, cakes. But yeah, I make them from scratch a lot. I make them, all the stuff is like hand done. It's pretty nerdy, but
That's
it's also
awesome.
like
Awesome.
constant, like figuring stuff out and problem solving and all that, which I really enjoy. So.
That's great, man. And listen, shout out to buttercream. I'm a big fan of buttercream. A red velvet cake with buttercream on top.
Yeah, that's good.
That's like, that'll change your life, man. Like, it's just a whole nother level.
You know what's funny? I found a cake group on Clubhouse the other day. I mean, it was phenomenal. They were having a debate, which one's better, buttercream or fondant. And everyone's like, "Oh, of course, buttercream." But you haven't tried my marshmallow fondant. It is so good. Regular fondants are terrible, but we make a homemade marshmallow fondant. And of course, you put some buttercream or some kind of other icing under that. Like, we have a vanilla icing that we actually put on our chocolate cakes, which is just, oh gosh. Anyway, this is not cake talk. I could talk forever.
We totally went down there. That's okay. Like, but again, process, right? So if we go back to the context of the conversation, that we all know baking a cake. If anybody's ever tried, one little mishap, it changes the whole outcome, right?
Yeah.
It changes and I think it's such a great analogy for life, right? Like, if you just follow the blueprint that people have, this is where we started the entire conversation. Follow the path, earn the opportunity, right? To get creative. Ray did not start out by making marshmallow fondant, right? He was probably making cakes out of Jiffy boxes.
Yeah, out of the box, man. The double moist are the best, just so you know. If you have to do a box cake. So I have to say, like, it's a great example because my kids are now interested in baking and helping out and stuff like that. And they'll be in the like middle of baking something. And they'll be like, "Why don't we add peppermint?" I'm like, that's not what the directions say. And they're like, "Yeah, but we should add it." And I have to like help them understand, like, at first, just practice making it like the instructions say. Then when you get good at that, when you almost have the instructions in your head, you'll start to understand the mix of flavors and be able to alter it at the right time to get the desired result. And so it is similar to business processes. Just follow the instructions at first. And then when you have a great understanding of those instructions, you can start to add flavor here and there at the right time that'll differentiate you from the marketplace.
Yo. There you go. That's the nugget for who would have known that Ray was going to make a cake out of real estate? It just happened right there. It was the old Emerald thing. Bam. Right. Like, that's what just happened. That's so good. Christopher, as we wrap this thing up, man, what are your takeaways from today's lessons from Ray? And Ray, thank you so much for taking the time to share, man. This has just been awesome to get to know you even more. But Chris, what moment of insight did you grab that you want to share back with the audience today?
Yeah, for me, the biggest thing was, just the fundamentals of it, like just a real, like, how we started it and how we ended this conversation is what was the biggest highlight for me is, follow the path that was set before you. And I think that if you get really good at the process, you become phenomenal anyway. Like, you just, and I guess just tying a bow on it is like, when you show up big in your day-to-day stuff, those results, success will be a byproduct of it all, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm grateful that that's how you started. I'm grateful that that's how we're ending it, because it was really good, man. Thank you for the time. Seriously.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
Yeah, it's been fire. So Ray, obviously you're in Central Arkansas. Correct me if I'm wrong. I want to make sure I get that right.
Okay. Yeah, we have offices in Central Arkansas and Northwest Arkansas as well.
Perfect. So if y'all need somebody to help you out, obviously Ray can help accommodate there. But more importantly, how can people connect with you if they want to start stalking you, learn a little bit, maybe how to make a cake, right?
Yeah.
Or learning about this beard situation you got going on, where would they go find you?
Instagram's probably the best way. So you can find me at Ray Zorback. It's RayZorback. And usually we have, like, whenever we do the podcast and stuff like that, we'll hook up that there. Any videos and stuff I do, I usually provide little snippets there and kind of the full link in the bio type of situation. So that's kind of the catch-all for everything. So
That's
just
great.
hit me up on Instagram and feel free to send me a message, and drop in the comments. What do you think? Buttercream or fondant? That's the question of the day.
I love that. And we didn't give a shout out to the podcast, so I want to do that. Right? What's the name of the podcast?
So This Week in Real Estate, it used to be called Bearded Men of Real Estate, but we were shocked at how many people didn't know what we talked about. So we changed the name to This Week in Real Estate, T-Wire for short, but it's still hosted by the Bearded Men of Real Estate. So I have a partner named Dan who's in LA, and he's also a real estate agent. And we just kind of chop it up on the news. Every week we always talk back and forth about the news, what's going on, what's happening in the world. And we created it because we feel like a rising tide lifts all boats. And so we wanted one place for real estate agents or people in the business, investors, to go where they could hear all the real estate news that was kind of pertinent to them that week. And they just spend 1 hour, they get below the headlines. We'll talk about the headlines, but we usually talk about the headlines and why they're, kind of misleading you to what the meat of the article says. And so then we talk a little bit about the meat of the article so that you can talk more intelligently in front of your clients and let them know what they need to do and the steps they need to take with their largest investments. So that's our place. We have it every week at 12 o'clock Central. We broadcast live on YouTube, Facebook, and Clubhouse.
That's awesome. And as you can tell, y'all, it's probably a good place to go, learn a little bit of something, get some value, probably talk about a cake or two. You don't know how it's ever going to turn out. I love that. That's right. And hey, until next time, y'all, if you've gotten any value from this, please let your peers know. Like, share Ray. Okay. Don't share us, but go share Ray and make sure buttercream or fondant. Inquiring minds definitely want to know. This guy right here for sure wants to know, because to me, if this isn't a lopsided victory, I don't know what is, but hey, well, what do I know in my small world here? But yeah, if you got any value from this, share it, let your office know about it. Feel free to hit that subscribe button. Until next time, y'all, we will see you guys with another action-packed episode with amazing real estate professionals just like Ray and that incredible beard that my man is sporting. So until next time, guys, have a great day. Go out and sell something.
We'll see you guys. Thanks.